Good evening, and welcome to Electronic Game Information and our Quarant-Egi edition of the show. My name is Robby Ratcliffe. So happy that you joined us here on this warm night in beautiful northeastern Los Angeles. We will get into all of the wonderful segments and features that we have in the show. But first, let's go over the news. The news of the day starts now. Chameleon Twist is, of course, up on the minds of many people these days. Chameleon Twist, the classic N64 platformer where you play as Davy the Chameleon. Davy the Chameleon with the long tongue that can be used for any number of things, any number of tricks. It's a wonderful thing to think that you might have some organ in your body or part of your body that could be used to fight off evil, to get yourself out of traps, or to kind of navigate levels. And Davy the Chameleon has that tongue, so we are so proud of Davy the Chameleon. But unfortunately, the reviews have come in, the reviews from 1997, when Chameleon Twist came out on the Nintendo 64, have come in, and they are not all that great. The IGN review for Davy the Chameleon Twist mentions that the gameplay is relatively simple but extremely intuitive, utilizing an overhead camera view similar to that found in Bomberman 64. Players must travel through odd, sometimes bland worlds using Davy's tongue to eat enemies and advance through the game. So sorry to hear that, Davy the Chameleon. Better luck next time with Chameleon Twist 2, which was also on the Nintendo 64, and which we might end up having to... You know, when I look at this, you wonder what God was thinking when he made the world. And Alan, EGI special correspondent Alan Resnick, fan of the show, Alan Resnick. Alan, maybe you can jump in here for a second.
Hey, Robby, I can hear you.
We're talking about Chameleon Twist here on Electronic Game Information, here live on AdultSwim.com.
Okay.
And I just wanted to get your thoughts about this Chameleon Twist situation.
Okay, let's jump into it. Let's rap about Chameleon Twist.
So it's 1997, flashback to 1997, but it's also, we're talking about it now. It's on people's minds if we're talking about it now.
Absolutely. If we're talking about it, people are thinking about it.
I want to run a couple of lines from this review from IGN from 1997, just in a couple of lines from this review that I think sends a mixed message about the quality of Chameleon Twist.
I'm all ears.
Okay, so this is a sentence that stuck out to me. The crazy tongue, that's Davy's tongue, Davy the Chameleon, can be controlled via the analog stick for precise latching.
What are we doing? What are we latching onto?
Latching onto enemies, onto objects, latching onto, I expect, environmental elements.
Okay. It's interesting. And is there a question in there?
I just was hoping that we could sort of take a step back and just kind of ponder that for a moment, because when we're thinking about these games, we're thinking about the sort of mind that could create such a game, such a system, such play mechanics, and it makes me wonder about the mind of God.
It's an interesting point. I think all game developers they must have a little bit of God in them, because they create worlds.
Okay, well, let me just sort of you think about the sort of the Almighty, the sort of the great decider of the cosmos, and you imagine what the world looks like to him from where he sits now. We do refer to it as a he, but I think that's sort of more of a universal he rather than a sort of specific gendering.
Right. I do like the concept of a large, like a giant god that looks down, and we look like little tiny ants looking down from the cloud. And I do like to think of God in a feminine female form, and huge, towering over us in the sky. So is that what was the name of the game?
It's called Chameleon Twist. It was from 1997 on the Nintendo 64. I just want to read one more line from this IGN review of Chameleon Twist on the Nintendo 64. Just imagine you're on a dirt road at night. You're driving your sort of Dodge pickup truck down a dirt road. The dirt on the road is only lit by perhaps the moon. Perhaps there's some mist sort of drifting in from either sides of the forest or the swamp or the bog on either side of this dirt road, and you hear the sirens of a police officer. You hear and see the sirens and the lights from a police officer. The police pulls you over on the side of the far out country road.
I'm scared.
Walks up to the driver's side of the car.
Yes, officer.
Knocks on the window. Can I see your license and registration? He asks.
Okay.
And rather than getting out your license and registration, rather than presenting those very important documents, you just look at the officer and say, Davey can also simply let his tongue fly out of his mouth, latch onto an object, and then suck himself into it.
That was the review for Chameleon Twist?
Yes, that was from the review of Chameleon Twist from 1997. The reviews have come in for this classic, but I think mixed bag of a game.
Absolutely. It sounds like it's asking for trouble with
Moving on to our next news story, EGI special correspondent Alan Resnick and I have been desperately searching for the identity of this video game character. And as you can see from the image that I'm holding up, we have not decided if the character is from Project Snowblind, the first-person shooter game that started out as a sort of Deus Ex first-person shooter. If he's from Advent Rising, which of course is the written by the very popular but questionably talented Orson Scott Card. We also wondered if the character might be from Omicron, the Nomad Soul. Alan, you're the sort of expert on Nomad Souls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this character, it's a mystery for the ages. I've been racking my brain trying to place this guy, and he could be from anywhere. Honestly, with a look like that, he's got kind of a thing on his. I think that's a bit of a clue. It's like either some sort of attachment, like a Borg. Maybe it's a Star Trek game, or maybe it's a hand.
Or it's a letter, or it could be the letter C.
Could be a birthmark. Could be some sort of creature that lives on his face.
Could be also Terminator Dawn of Fate. We will continue searching. We will continue looking for the sort of the landing pad for this very particular, very interesting character here in Electronic Game Information. I don't know what this game is. It's called Dungeon Explorer.
Dungeon Explorer. It's straightforward.
It seems fairly straightforward, but I didn't feel like looking it up. Moving on to our next story, of course, is Buck Bumble. Buck Bumble, now that we're on the sort of path of Nintendo 64 mascot-style games, mascot-driven games, Buck Bumble comes to mind because it is made by the people behind Star Fox now. Star Fox, the
right.
Star Fox 64.
Yeah, I knew that.
Argonaut, but published by Ubisoft, which I find very interesting.
They've put out so many games.
Like what?
Buck Bumble.
Like Buck Bumble on the N64, but they haven't put out a lot of Argonaut games, I find.
Yeah, I hope they change course once this whole quarantine is over. Maybe they'll change course. They'll put out one of those games you mentioned.
What is an Argonaut after all?
I think it's an astronaut. I think an Argonaut is an adventurer or an astronaut, maybe a space adventurer.
Space adventurer, a space like Jason the Space
Adventurer.
We knew that, so that when we hear that Jason and the Argonauts, we knew that we were talking about space adventure.
I'm just so happy to be part of the news segment. I'm not normally part of this segment, and it's a thrill to spend even a little bit more time with Robby is like getting injected with some sort of a B12 shot.
Yeah, it's like a B12 shot, or it's like drinking a big jug of one of those refrigerated Arizona green teas.
Absolutely, it wakes you up, and I do feel alive and well because I'm spending time with Robby. And when I'm not with you, my time is dull.
Well, it's hot, and I lost my train of thought, but I'm so happy to have you here with me, Alan, because when the brain softens, when the head goes wild, you know that you can always count on fan of the show, Alan Resnick, to come in and talk about the news of the day. And with that in mind, Alan, I think we have another segment of your very special another version. Another chapter, another
installment.
Your final installment, an installment of the segment.
And the segment is called No One Is Talking About This.
No one is talking about this with Alan, EGI special correspondent, fan of the show, Alan Resnick. Back to you, Alan, with No One Is Talking
About This. And we're going to be talking about, no one is talking about Dirge of Cerberus, Final Fantasy VII, an EGI special report by special correspondent.
When I hear the word dirge, it makes me think of the old the Ethiopian Maoist junta that ruled Ethiopia between the rule of King Haile Selassie and the current Ethiopian People's Party. Is it People's Party?
Well, Robby, if you listen to my special report, maybe you'll find out. So, no one is talking about Dirge of Cerberus, Final Fantasy VII. Why? Well, it is probably because the hearts and minds of a fearful nation under crisis have turned their complete and total attention to a different Final Fantasy VII. I'm speaking, of course, about the recently released Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Very popular game.
An incredible game with heart-stopping graphics and enjoyable gameplay beloved by all, including Alan, who is playing it. This is why no one is talking about Dirge of Cerberus, Final Fantasy VII.
And why isn't anyone talking about Dirge of Cerberus, Alan? I mean, this is a fantastically unique game in the Final Fantasy, in the sort of scope of Final Fantasy games of remakes and tie-ins. Dirge of Cerberus certainly stands on its own.
Well, let's dig in deeper and find out why no one is talking about Dirge of Cerberus. Both the new good Final Fantasy VII and the uninteresting older Dirge of Cerberus Final Fantasy VII are about, of course, it's in the name, Final Fantasy VII. They both are made by a company called Square Enix. But here is where the similarities stop. Dirge of Cerberus, Final Fantasy VII, is a third-person shooter, and it follows the popular character Vincent Valentine. It's a very popular character. The name Dirge of Cerberus, Final Fantasy VII, is an interesting one.
Now, I'm going to stop you right there because you said it's made by Square Enix, but I think you missed a very big name that was also involved with the creation of the Dirge of Cerberus, Final Fantasy.
That doesn't sound like me, but go on.
Monolith Soft. Monolith Soft was, of course, part of the development sort of unit that created this game, and I do think that they deserve some recognition during your segment.
Absolutely, Robby. And if you rewind the tape, you'll probably find that I did mention Monolith Soft several times.
Soft, of course, the people behind the wonderful Xenoblade Chronicles game, Xenoblade Chronicles X,
and Dirge of Cerberus, Final Fantasy VII. And I did mention, I'm almost 1,000% positive I mentioned it at least 4 times. So just rewind the tape, you'll see that I did do my research. I did mention it.
Almost no similarities with another game that Monolith Soft worked on, and they worked on a very specific aspect of the game Legend of Zelda: The Breath of the Wild.
Well, good. That's us. They've had quite a history, and it's just too bad that they had their hands in Dirge of Cerberus.
At the rocks, that we do want to look at those rocks.
Absolutely. Dirge of Cerberus. And so let me just get back to my special report. No one is talking about Dirge of Cerberus. No one is talking about Dirge of Cerberus, and it has such an interesting name. Let's break down the name. Dirge meaning lament for the dead, and Cerberus refers to the mythological hellhound of Hades, Cerberus. Ooh, spooky. And Final Fantasy VII refers to, of course, Final Fantasy VII. Remember when we saw Tifa at E3?
We saw Tifa, we saw E3. We did not see Cerberus because...
Thank God.
Cerberus is busy.
Yes. Thank God no Cerberus. There isn't much else to say about Dirge of Cerberus because no one is talking about it. Not even Alan. There's nothing to say.
That's the real question, isn't it? I mean, we have to answer that specific question at least twice if we're going to actually, because you sort of answered it once. Sort of answered it once, but you answer it 2 more times. You can triangulate and kind of create, because in the middle is the true answer. When you have the 3 questions, you get the one answer in the middle.
So you want me to answer a couple more times why no one is talking about Dirge of Cerberus? The ugly graphics and the muddled gameplay. At the time of its release, game reviewer Games TM said, Dirge is an ugly, cynical, and tiresome video game, the likes of which the next generation will hopefully eradicate. So there you have it. People don't like talking about Dirge of Cerberus. I certainly didn't enjoy it, but that's the way the cookie crumbles when one is talking about Dirge of Cerberus. Back to you, Robby.
Back to you, Alan. That was a wonderful look at an often overlooked, I think it's called a Gaiden, when it's a sort of a side story to a larger story.
It's more of like a side quest or DLC kind of crap.
So you think it's a DLC?
It felt like, from my research, people would it was like a side story that didn't matter, and it felt like DLC. Like
it doesn't feel well. So DLC for Final Fantasy VII, or maybe DLC for Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII, or DLC for one of the.
It just feels like DLC for people's for their thoughts and feelings about the Final Fantasy VII story.
I see.
If that makes any sense.
So it's like what we're talking about instead of DLC. That's just sort of like, oh, this is a sort of a new level, or we gave you some new swords, or a slightly larger room to explore.
That's right.
DLC that you're talking about is the kind of the god mind of the gaming community that is created by Final Fantasy VII.
It's like a mental bubble in your brain that's like, oh yeah, like you think of Final Fantasy VII, you're like, wow, what a great story, and then you're like, oh yeah, there's Dirge of Cerberus too, and it's not. Do you think that this we're talking about this sort of disembodied kind of collective mind floating out there in the ether somewhere, thinking, and did it think Dirge of Cerberus and it was made, or did we cover whether or not it was man-made, or was it? It was made by Monolith Soft. It was, and Square Enix. So it's definitely man-made.
Good people over there at Square Enix. They've always been big supporters of the video gaming world
and the Final Fantasy franchise.
And the Final Fantasy franchise. Always willing to take a hit to put out a new Final Fantasy game.
Like Dirge of Cerberus. And the new one, which is actually good, and people do like it. And I think we should play that on the show.
I don't think so, Alan. We do have so much more of Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning to dive into, which we will be diving to later in the show. But we're also going to do Half-Life Alyx. Is that true? We did say that we will do Half-Life Alyx at some point in the near future.
Tonight we're going to do. Robby, I can do it tonight. I'm ready. I have it set up. We're going to do. EGI exclusive. Alan's going to play Half-Life Alyx on the show. It's going to be a streaming event of the year. So tune in tonight. You already are, but keep watching because I will be playing Final Fantasy Half-Life Alyx. I'll play.
We could.
Let's do the next segment, and then we'll do Half-Life Alyx.
Let's take a quick break, and then we will be right back with more electronic game information. Play VR. We're going to do VR. We're not doing it tonight. And we are back. Alan, we're back, and we are here to ready to do our very, very popular, very famous segment. It's the letters. These are actual letters. These are actual questions, comments, observations sent in by you, the audience, to Electronic Game Information here live on AdultSwim.com. We respond to your questions, and we give you the insights that you demand. So, Alan, why don't you give us a quick kickoff with It's the Letters?
Okay, we're going to do It's the Letters, and this soft _cat_ draws. What's Alan's favorite thing about Robby? And that's such an interesting question, and it's definitely something I've thought about a lot because he has many, many good qualities. First and foremost, I would think it would have to be his brain.
The brain.
Yes.
And we're just so we're clear, we're not talking about that collective brain, that sort of demanded and manifested kingdoms or dirge of service.
I'm talking about Robby's creative brain that comes up with beautiful ideas and does electronic game information twice a week. It's just, and I also think secondary would be his face, his eyes, his eyebrows, and his mouth. But those are all kind of what make up my favorite things about Robby. So it's the letters, and I'm going to start getting ready to play Half-Life Alyx.
Alan, don't play Half-Life Alyx. You're going to be playing that next week, so don't worry about doing it tonight. But we will. I did say that you could play it.
You did say I could play it this week, and I do have it set up, and we're just.
I said last week that you could play it. No, I said last. Just play it. Just play it.
Robby,
just play it. I don't. Yeah, of course.
I will be playing it this week.
Before you start playing it, I do have some. We do have some. It's the letters questions. We have a question from. This is from Instagram. We have a question from BNDNNG Benending. Benending asked, "What's the best 2D isometric RPG?" And Alan, I think that you probably know the answer to this question. It is Landstalker. Landstalker is, of course, one of the best 2D RPGs, 2D isometric RPGs on the market today. You can buy it with the Sega Genesis Classics collection on the Nintendo Switch and a number of other places, but I do find that Nintendo Switch has Landstalker finds a very nice home on the Nintendo Switch in that collection. Although, Alan, you and I, you've kind of heard me talking about this a number of times. When it comes to that Sega Genesis collection, I find that the extraneousness of that 3D room that you have to navigate to get to the games, to kind of open up, I want something if I'm going to play emulated games on the Nintendo Switch, I want clean software. I want something simple. I want something minimal. I want to be able to get to the games quick, open them up quick, load my save states, save my save states, rewind, fast forward, the whole distance.
Absolutely. Me too, Robby.
Now, what a great way to play Landstalker, one of the best, if not the best, 2D isometric RPG.
Game. Yeah, Landstalker, it's incredible.
Alan, I understand you have another question to answer?
Oh, sure. This is a question. What's the best 2D isometric RPG? Okay.
Alan, we already answered the 2D isometric RPG question.
Okay. These questions are.
Although, thinking about it, you might have some room to make an argument for the likes of Bastion and Transistor, some of those wonderful games from that wonderful team of developers over at that game development studio that puts those games out.
Okay, we have a question here from Laura Lynn Leak, friend of the show. Laura Lynn Leak. What are your thoughts on Train Station Renovation Simulator? This is a train question. It's going out to Robby.
Alan, you know that I'm a big train fan. I do love the trains. I think they're big. I think they're loud. I love when they go choo-choo, and I love when I get to ride one from one part of the country to the other part of the country. It's a great way to see the sights, to take in as much, take in a lot of scenery as possible that you might otherwise miss when you're out in a car, paying attention to the road, making sure you don't drive off the road, making sure you don't get pulled over on a dirt road in the moonlight by those police officers who demand to know trivial aspects of Chameleon Twist reviews.
Robby, I'm playing Half-Life Alyx.
Alan, I need your. I'm very excited to see that your PC is going wild. It seems to be broken. Your your player character does not seem to have any arms or feet. No feet. So your system is broken, so you might want to do a hard reset. And when I say hard reset, I mean the sort of the function that the computer must go through, rather than the wonderful first-person shooter game Hard Reset, which also received a recent Hard Reset redo on a number of platforms. And if you are one of those people that have always wondered what it might be like if the machines took over very small areas of a city, then you might be interested in playing Hard Reset on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC.
Robby.
We have another question from Buff Smurf. This is actually less of a question, more of a statement from Buff Smurf. Buff Smurf asks or says, "I haven't watched the show in a while, but I believe the game setting on Mars someone called in to ask about was actually Martian Gothic on the PlayStation 1." So thank you so much, Smurf man, bald bad Smurf, little Smurf. It's all sorts of Smurf coverage on Electronic Game Information as we do dive into these questions, as we watch Alan enjoying himself very mightily in this. The game still looks broken to me, Alan, so why don't you go ahead and fix that, and I am going to continue reading the letters. Marco Lot Hernandez. This is a question for Robby Ratcliffe. That's me. This is Electronic Game Information with Robby Ratcliffe and, of course, fan of the show, Alan Resnick. Robby Ratcliffe, how do you track the time you spend in creating games such as Mario Maker 2 in your spreadsheet? That's not really the gameplay, right? Do you have a separate spreadsheet for game development? And it's a great question, Marco Lot Hernandez. One of the best questions, and a question that I do get quite a bit. Especially when it comes to all of these sort of custom games, these kind of user-driven game experiences like Mario Maker 2. And the answer is that I do lump all of that time into that one gameplay category, because I do find that the Mario Maker 2 interface, the way that Mario Maker is presented, is
oh my god. Oh my god!
It does feel like a game, even if you're doing a lot of work. So, thank you for your question, Marco Lot Hernandez, and I hope that you have your own spreadsheet, and I hope that you're logging in the amount of game time that you're getting out of your purchases. TSA.gov_official. So this is a question from the official TSA. The TSA, of course, are the wonderful people who keep us safe at the borders, in the airports, at the terminal, at the ocean terminals, where the ocean liners come in, and where all the goods and services that we rely on as Americans pass through into our country. TSA, thank you so. Big shout out for the TSA people. TSA.gov_official wants to know what our favorite tabletop games are, and I'm a big fan of games like Arkham Horror and Scythe, because I do like those alternate history games. But I also must say that the game that I have been playing the most is Catan on the Nintendo Switch. Especially, it's not the tabletop Catan. The apartment being small enough that we don't have a table big enough to have board game nights. We do have the digital version of Catan on the Nintendo Switch in this household.
Robby, do you see this?
So, Alan, tell us what you're seeing. Tell us what tell us what you're doing. Are you enjoying your experimentation with this live here on Electronic Game Information?
Robby, this is the coolest thing I've ever done. It's more enjoyable than any kind of drug. Robby, do you see what I wrote? You can write stuff. It's like
I can't. Unfortunately, Alan, the feed that is coming from your computer here tonight is a little blurry, so I can't quite see what you're drawing or what you're looking at. But Alan, I trust that you.
Alan loves Robby. I wrote, Alan loves Robby. You see it? Robby. You see it says Alan?
Yeah, Alan, I see it. Looks good. I'm glad that you're having such a good time. I'm enjoying very much watching you. We had so many good questions
Robby, this is
and comments for It's the Letters. It's just great to just be able to have two things happen at the same time, so you can really experience the variety on the show, that you can experience the amount of work that we put in to make sure that each episode of Electronic Game Information is as unique as possible.
Robby, look, I drew you. You see? And you can just smudge it with your fingers. This is awesome.
Alan, I wonder if you have any more thoughts about that Omicron, the Nomad Soul. Because when I think of Omicron, the Nomad Soul, I do think of sort of these dystopian, futuristic games like Half-Life Alyx. And if you didn't have Omicron, might you not also have Half-Life? Might you not also have Half-Life 2? And thereby, might you not have Half-Life Alyx if you didn't have Omicron, the Nomad?
Robby, do you see there's a bird? I'm like actually in the Half-Life universe in City 17 in Half-Life.
City 17, of course, made very famous by the opening sequence of Half-Life 2, which I think most people would say is, if Alan, you hear that sound, that means that we have a new segment coming in. We have a new segment alert. This is an ETI exclusive new segment alert. We have a new segment here tonight on Electronic Game Information. It is called Personality Profiles of Video Gaming, and it is the Kingdoms Amalur edition of that segment, because we have been looking at games including Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning. We also are going to be covering the people behind Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, because I do feel like if you have those games, if you're talking about those games, then you're also you're kind of wondering the minds behind those games, the people behind those games, the God mind thing that we were talking about earlier still comes into play when you can be talking about a larger group of developers like Monolith Soft, or you could be talking about personality profiles of the game developers as individuals.
Robby.
So tonight we're going to be looking at none other than Ken Rolston. Ken Rolston, of course, was the lead designer behind Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning. Ken Rolston was made very famous in the gaming community by his work on the you might say essential action role-playing game, Western action role-playing games, Morrowind and Oblivion. Ken Rolston, of course, has a very funny version of himself that was made in the Morrowind engine. You can see it here. This is not being shown on any other video game talk show that I know of, but here he is looking quite like a regular villager, but you can never tell with villagers in Morrowind. They could be waiting to take you on adventures. They could be waiting to take you by surprise and try to steal things from you. You never know who to trust in Morrowind. You never know where you are in Morrowind. And that's one of the great things about Morrowind, I think, is just that sense of the vastness of opportunity, the vastness of the openness of fate that exists in those types of games. And for whatever reason, Morrowind seems to I still believe that Morrowind has done it better than most of the open world action RPGs that have happened to us since then. So let's look at some. What the hell is this? So let's look at some quotes from Ken Rolston. Ken Rolston, these are actual Ken Rolston quotes found online. Ken Rolston said not that long ago on Twitter, this is a quote taken directly from Twitter. This has not been deleted or altered in any way. Just says, I just backed Zero Sum, the card game, on Kickstarter. So if you're a fan of card games and you meet Ken Rolston in the future, ask him about Zero Sum, the card game, because he backed it on Kickstarter. I would love to know if Zero Sum, the card game, got the attention it deserved because it had the backing of this wonderful, talented game developer, Ken Rolston.
Robby, it's real.
Another quote from Ken Rolston is as follows: "I spent the best 4 hours of my CRPG life playing the Wrecker's Cave map in Divinity Original Sin 2 last night. I did it my way, a tragically wrong way. Hats off to the brilliant design Larian." I don't know what that word means, if that's a person or if that's it's a capitalized, so it's a proper noun. Could be a person, could be a kind of an entity. You never know with these vast open world action RPGs or games like Divinity Original Sin 2. Larian could be literally anything. So hats off to a brilliant design Larian and the tools and freedom to make a messy, delicious epic of it. Messy and delicious epic of it. I don't like the word delicious when referring to CRPGs, Alan.
Look at this. Every single thing has a little bit of shine to it, and it's like have physicality to it. It's they finally fulfill the promise
the words that
of the game.
The word delicious to me denotes some. I don't want to think about. I don't want to. I think about wetness when I think about the word delicious. I think about wetness, and when I think about wetness, I don't want to. That's not something I want to think about when I'm trying to play these massively open world action RPGs.
Robby,
Alan,
I'm
thoughts?
no longer in my house. I'm in someone else's house.
So let's take some quick calls and see what people are saying about Ken Rolston, about Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, and if maybe if there's any insights into the Chameleon Twist reviews that we were talking about earlier in the show.
Robby, I don't know where I am.
Alan, you're right at home. We're here with you here live on Electronic Game Information on AdultSwim.com. And we are waiting for your calls. We are waiting to hear your voices, see your faces, and wondering what you're doing, if you're okay, and if you're angry with us for anything, because we are desperately trying to bring you the kind of entertainment that you would expect from Electronic Game Information if we had a fully functioning studio, which we unfortunately in these troubled times we do not. But luckily we do have plenty of action happening. We have Alan seemingly trying to get out of a glitch in the game that he's been playing.
I'm sleeping.
He has refused to restart the computer, which I think might actually make much things better. And of course, with a game like Half-Life Alyx, you can only imagine a game like that on a hot night like tonight. We might be having a shutdown as a result of heat in that desktop PC.
Robby, is this a real elevator? Oh my God! I'm in my house somehow.
Alan, I want to get some more of the sort of observations about the idea of an almighty from you.
What are you asking?
Alan, I'm wondering how your sense of that entity, that kind of unknowable entity, how that works for you.
I don't understand. Robby, you don't understand what's happening. There's a person. Look.
Yes, there is a person here on Electronic Game Information. This just in, we do have our first guest of the evening. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How do I do the big?
Are you talking to my character?
Do you have a question or an observation about the show?
Yeah. How can we see Alan's screen? He's doing like
Alan
the
is
reverse of what
doing
you
his own.
see.
One of the reasons that I told Alan that he could do the Half-Life Alyx playthrough on the show next week was because we would have had this set up to actually be able to see what he's doing on the computer, but because he decided to jump the gun, do the playthrough tonight, we are only left with a camera pointed at his screen and at his...
I'll move it, Robby. I'll move the camera. You talk and I'll come.
He's never coming back.
He's coming back. He's on his way. Alan Resnick. This just in. Alan Resnick is moving towards the camera. He's going to direct the camera a little bit more clearly, hopefully at that screen, so we can see those wonderful hands, because the hands are despite the fact that the arms aren't there, the hands are there.
I don't know what you can see.
Did Ubisoft have anything to do with this? Because Ubisoft, of course, has the wonderful character Rayman, who has hands but no arms.
Robby, can you see the game?
Well, I never even thought about that. That's a deep one.
Guest, I'm so happy that you're here with us tonight. We are so excited to see people here doing well on this hot Thursday evening here in Los Angeles. Where are you calling from?
Good. I'm in Florida right now.
Florida. Which part of Florida?
Oh, I'm in South Florida. I'm in
South
Delray Beach.
Delray Beach?
You're from Florida, right?
I am from Florida. I am from northern Florida. I'm from Tallahassee, Florida, one of the weirdest and grossest places, I think, on the American landscape. But
yeah, I don't know anything about that. It seems like a whole different world.
It's a trip. And honestly, I think wonderful segue into talking about the kinds of worlds that we talk about here on the show when we talk about worlds, the worlds of Amalur, the worlds of the Feylands, or in Alan's case, the world of City 17. Places matter, right?
Yeah,
You can't just
I would
people.
say so.
If you have just people walking around talking and blabbing at each other, it's practically it could be anywhere, it could be anything. It's just meaningless without some sort of grounding.
Yeah, it would be weird if we just kind of were floating around.
Yeah,
how would you know where to go?
How would we know where to go? Except perhaps with a wonderful hand, a wonderful warm hand coming down for us to pick us up and carry us along through not eternity, but maybe we could have been granted longer lifespans.
I mean, I like that one more. Can we do that?
I'm sort of struck by the turn this episode has taken, because we're really getting into what I think are the metaphysics, or perhaps the things that define the reasons for the building of stories, for the making of mythos, the mythoses. Mythos.
Yeah.
Mythos. I like that. And you know, when we ask questions about how things work, why things work a certain way, then we can always answer the questions with a story that we made up.
That is exactly how I live my whole entire life. And yeah, I salute you.
I salute you too. Thank you for your call. Enjoy the wonderful beaches down in Delray Beach, southern Florida. Thank you for your call. We have another caller on hold on the line, waiting to come up. Alan, how are you
doing? Robby, one of the characters hurt me. Something bit me.
Who's on what?
I don't know. It hurt my elbow. A character did.
You banged into the table there, Alan.
Yeah, there's a table in the game, and I guess it was real. Look, I smashed a cup. Everything is amazing now. Whoa, can you drink?
We have another. Lord Tony has joined us here on Electronic Game Information, here live on AdultSwim.com on this warm Los Angeles evening. One of those evenings that makes you ask the question: is everything possible?
Is everything possible? Yes.
No.
Lord Tony, what are your thoughts? Have you been playing the Chameleon Twist games? Chameleon Twist on the Nintendo 64, 1997. Very much in the now, I think.
I never played that, but I wanted to talk about more about Omicron.
Omicron, the Nomad Soul. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
It's probably one of the best games I ever played, but except for the shooting's really terrible.
Well, it's an interesting game, isn't it? Because it tries to be a number of things. It tries to be kind of a point-and-click adventure game. It tries to be a first-person shooter. And it's almost a sort of, I think, a sort of spiritual successor to some of those early Kojima adventure games that had shooting segments. And
right.
Of course, talking about Snatcher and Police Knots.
Right, and I like taking control of other bodies too.
Taking control of other bodies, of course, a real trip. What it must be like to just be floating around and looking at other people and just wondering and just thinking into yourself at any moment, I could take over that person and make them move in the way that I wanted them to move.
I mean, that'd be crazy. I know one of the things is that they make you are the person controlling those players, which is weird. It's like breaking the fourth wall.
Breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah.
Because fourth wall being time, the dimension of time.
Right. So, and if you lose in the game, then your soul is trapped in the game, like your actual soul.
Soul is trapped in the game. This actually reminds me. We're talking about permadeath at this point, so it reminds me of the wonderful, very, very convoluted, very complicated, not convoluted, complicated. There's two different words, convoluted and complicated. People don't recognize that enough. Very complicated, but very I think heavily a game that requires a lot of heavy investing, and that is of course Steel Battalion on the original Xbox, which if you die in that game, if your mech falls in battle when invading those territories, when invading those enemy territories, the game actually does flip you back all the way to the very beginning, and you have to start anew.
I saw a woman.
Well, doesn't Dwarf Fortress do that too?
Dwarf Fortress.
Yeah. Because if you die, I think you lose everything.
Now, why is that?
Well, like everything starts over, including the world. So like everything you had, you lose. So it's kind of interesting.
I find that life is very similar to this.
Yeah. Because if you die, you lose everything.
Permadeath is becoming such a thing these days. People are so excited about it because they know with everybody with death on the mind that the idea of a permanent death in a virtual setting is actually quite engaging.
Robby, if I die in this, I feel like it might happen for real.
Thief?
I have played the Thief series.
The new one that has permanent death.
The newest
Thief that has permanent death.
Thief, of course, published by the wonderful people over at Square Enix. Alan, Square Enix, the people that behind Dirge of Cerberus.
Dirge of Cerberus, right? Yeah.
Square Enix is such a monumental company, and so willing to take risks, so willing to relaunch old franchises like the Thief franchise, and bring us the wonderful answers. The answers.
Whoa!
They are willing to ask the questions, the triangulations of questions with the answers in the middle.
Oh, fuck. Robby, I'm on a plank.
So thank you for your call, Lord Tony, and we will be looking for your thoughts and your insights when we close our eyes at night. Lord Tony, always so wonderful to hear from you on Electronic Game Information. So let's take another short break, and then we will be right back.
Okay.
And we are back with the list. Alan, what's the list? And tonight's list is a very special list, very, very special list because it's the intersection of gaming and finance that we call the PlayStation Plus subscription. And the list tonight is, of course, PlayStation Plus instant game collection games that I missed because either I had let my PlayStation Plus subscription lapse on purpose, or through the forgetfulness. A wonderful list for tonight on this warm Los Angeles evening, when it just does feel like anything is possible to be talking about all these PlayStation Plus instant game collection games that I never got to download complimentary with my PlayStation Plus subscription. Let's dive right into the list with Ninja Gaiden Sigma. Ninja Gaiden Sigma is, of course, the Ninja Gaiden game that was originally made for the original Xbox, also known as Ninja Gaiden Black for some people who were sort of later to the Ninja Gaiden Xbox games. And it was ported to a number of consoles, including the PlayStation 3 and Vita. We are talking about the Vita. So we're talking about the Vita here. We're talking about Ninja Gaiden Sigma on the PlayStation Vita. Probably not the best way to play the Ninja Gaiden games because of various performance issues or perhaps various issues with the size of the PlayStation Vita layout of the controller, the controlling. I don't want to say the controller parts. The parts of the console that are the controller. When you have a portable, it's complicated because it's not detachable. Then you can't quite say controller. The parts that are you can't quite say the parts that are the controller because they are the system in and of itself, Alan.
I mean, the game got too scary.
So Ninja Gaiden Sigma is on the list, and so is Ninja Gaiden 2. Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2, which I also did not get when it was a complimentary PlayStation Plus Instant Game Collection game for the PlayStation Vita. Another probably problematic port of the Ninja Gaiden series. But what a thrill it must have been for the people who were there, who were paying attention, who actually got their hands, their mitts. The mitts. Their hands are the grubby mitts. If they got their grubby mitts on Ninja Gaiden Sigma or Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2 on the PlayStation Vita, they must have had just a heck of a time playing those games designed for the original Xbox on a portable console with that beautiful OLED screen. The OLED screen made famous on the PlayStation Vita. We have not seen a dedicated gaming portable console with an OLED screen since those PS Vitas rolled out of factories in Shenzhen and two American shores. But maybe one day we will come back and maybe we'll wake up one morning and we'll just say, let's check the news, and we open up the news app on our phones or our tablets, or maybe we actually type in the full newspaper or news channel web address into the browser itself and go directly to the news and find that yes, they are. It has happened. The wonderful people at Nintendo who have brought us the wonderful Nintendo Switch, the Switch Lite, and all sorts of other consoles over the years have actually put out a new version of the Nintendo Switch with a higher processing capabilities and perhaps that OLED screen that we missed so much from the PS Vita. Hydrophobia Prophecy is another game that I actually own on Steam, but I missed when it was a PlayStation Plus Instant Game Collection game, and it racking my brain right now to try and remember if I bought it on Steam first or if I missed it first when it was an instant game collected game. Hydrophobia Prophecy was, of course, one of the first indie games to claim that it had AAA production value. So it was a game made by a very small studio, but with a very interesting game where you sort of navigate the interior of a ship as it sinks. Alan,
Robby, there's parts of a bike everywhere.
So that's interesting. Hydrophobia Prophecy is on the list, and so is the Jak and Daxter trilogy. Jak and Daxter trilogy is on the list. The wonderful collection of action platformer games. You can't have, you've heard me say it before, and I'll say it again, but you can't have Chameleon Twist 2, and Buck Bumble without the Jak and Daxter series.
Rob, you talking about Chameleon Twist?
That's the other way around. What I meant to say was you can't have the Jak and Daxter trilogy without the Buck Bumbles and the Davy Chameleon and the Davy Chameleon Twist 2.
Robbie, I'm shoveling.
The Jak and Daxter trilogy, of course, is 3 games in one on the PlayStation Vita. Would have been wonderful to get as part of that PlayStation Plus Instant Game Collection complimentary package, but unfortunately, I did sleep on it, and I missed that opportunity, so I will have to wait until we get one of those wonderful PlayStation Store fire sales where they sell off PlayStation Vita games at a steep discount, Alan. Devil May Cry, DMC Devil May Cry is on the list. PlayStation 3 version of DMC Devil May Cry It is another game that I do own on Steam and have played through a number of times. And I do find that despite the haters, I find that as far as the DMC Devil May Cry is concerned, I do enjoy it a great deal. I think that some of the aspects of the game work better and have aged better than some of the older Devil May Cry games, especially your Devil May Cry 2 and 3 and 1. But they relaunched the series with Devil May Cry 5, even though I don't think you can say it's a relaunch because it is just got the 5 at the end of it. So it is a sequel, Alan.
Yeah.
Muramasa Rebirth is on the list. Muramasa Rebirth is a wonderful action RPG, but presented like a 2D action platform, which is very interesting. Very interesting way of having all of these RPG elements kind of late. We're talking about isometric RPGs. This is a side-scrolling RPG, if you can believe it, Alan.
Robby, there's a car door.
Dragon's Crown is on the list. Dragon's Crown is, of course, a game that was made by people who don't know what women look like, but there's something about it that has always drawn me to the Dragon's Crown screenshots that are on the page for Dragon's Quest in the PlayStation 4. It was a PlayStation Plus instant game collection game on the I want to say PlayStation 3 and PS Vita, but it might have just been the PS Vita. And you'll start to notice a pattern here, Alan, that I am talking mostly about PS Vita games because I was related up with PS Vita, so I only had the one PlayStation console, so it is arguable that I did not feel like I had enough of an investment in the PlayStation ecosystem to have a PlayStation Plus subscription, but when I had the PS Vita, which we do because fans of this, and we do have fans of the show, they do know that I got the PS Vita for $199.99 on a special sale and it came packed in with none other than Borderlands 2 as a downloadable Borderlands 2 Game of the Year edition, Alan.
Was that a lot for that time?
Borderlands 2 was, of course, considered by many people to be an experiment that failed miserably on the PS Vita, but nonetheless, it is a wonderful game at its very core. So to be able to run around in that world, that fictional Borderlands 2 world, in search of the demon, Handsome Jack.
Robby, there's like a fun playground you can play with. Whoa.
Swapper is on the list. The Swapper is a wonderful Metroidvania style game that time forgot that time has not been kind to. I think is because the Metroidvania genre has of course exploded since the advent of the Nintendo Switch, and we do tend to forget about the Metroidvania games that sort of bridge the gap between before the term Metroidvania was used and when it was not. And if you flip those two if you flip that statement to the around to the side, the swapper, swap it. In fact, if you swap the statement, you find that there's a very very clear sort of distinction between the clear line that you can draw between the swapper and such games as
Robby, something amazing is happening.
Yakuza 4. Yakuza 4 is on the list. I do have a number of Yakuza 4 games that we could be talking about. I have 4 Yakuza games is what I should be saying. Yakuza 4 is a Shenmue inspired kind of gangster simulator for a number of platforms. It was on the PlayStation 3. It was a free game with your instant game PS Plus instant game collection. Is it collection?
Collection. Robby,
subscription. And I missed out because I was not a subscriber the month that it was placed in the instant game collection. So that was the list, Alan. And we are wrapping up the show now. So, Alan, why don't you have a seat and let's talk about what happened, what we thought of the show.
I got a bucket on my head.
Alan, this is a wonderful time that we have because of the formats that we have requires that we do take some time out of the show to just kind of discuss what we think went right and what we could be doing perhaps better. Perhaps we don't jump the gun when you when I say you can do a segment, and you wait until the time is right so we can do it properly instead of just watching you do what I think is an arguably extremely confusing set of motions and movements.
Totally. Robby, this is so cool. You have to do this.
Yeah, you think about it, we started the show off talking about Buck Bumble and Chameleon Twist, and we ended up the show, I think, really almost discussing the nature of language itself.
There's something in this locker.
So if you follow me on, there's always a curve to everything. There's curves in life, and there's a curve in the universe. And I think that's in the universe, in science, they call that gravity, or they call that the space-time arc.
I mean, some old lady's house and like smashing up her shit.
But here on Electronic Game Information, I call that the news. The video game news that the viewers demand, the video game news that we refused to not cover simply because no one else was covering it. When we decided to cover it because no one else was covering it.
They have everything in this game, Robby.
Yes, now.
They have everything. Are you still doing EGI?
Nope.
It ended?
You're still on.
Robby? I'm never going to stop doing this.
We're not still on. We're on Tuesday. Just in. The show wasn't over when we thought it was just over just now. The show will go on. We're back next week with 2 more electronic game information episodes next week, Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Thursday at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Send us your art, send us your questions. We will be looking for those. We are always love to hear from you, the viewers, the audience. What we do is for you, not for us. And you guys stay safe out there, and always remember that sometimes I think the show is over and it isn't over, and that's okay.
Robby, you have to try Half-Life Alyx. Like, yes, it's so good.